My dad can buy you, Mr. Veal. Do you believe that statement helps your case in any way, huh? Judge Selena Dryden's voice sliced through the tension like a cold blade. Let me be perfectly clear. In this courtroom, money does not speak. The law does. And until you understand that, you will sit down. 20-year-old Preston Vale, entitled Smug, wrapped in a sense of invincibility, had no idea those careless words he tossed out like confetti were about to trigger the most humiliating, unforgettable 30 minutes of his life. He thought this was just another morning of getting away with everything. He didn't know his entire world was about to flip. The Fort Worth, Texas courtroom was unnervingly quiet, the kind of heavy, loaded silence that clings to the walls. It felt like everyone in the room knew something big, explosive was about to go down. At the defense table sat Preston Vale in a perfectly tailored navy suit, looking more like a glossy magazine model than a defendant. He lounged back, arms folded, wearing a smirk that said he believed the entire judicial system existed for his entertainment. To him, this hearing was just a small inconvenience before brunch. Across from him sat Judge Selena Dryden, early 50s. Iron-spined yet calm, one of those women whose presence alone demands respect. Composed, precise, known across Tarrant County for being fair, firm, and absolutely allergic to arrogance. And on this morning, arrogance was sitting right in front of her. All rise, the bailiff's voice boomed. Everyone stood, everyone except Preston, who rose at the last second, slowly, lazily, adjusting his cufflinks like he was posing for a photo shoot. He radiated disrespect without even trying. Judge Dryden took her seat and opened the file. Mr. Vale, she began, voice steady, you're facing charges for driving under the influence, destruction of property, and verbal assault on a police officer. How do you plead? Preston let out a dramatic sigh. Not guilty, Your Honor. There was a mocking tilt to his voice, like he was challenging her. A woman in the gallery whispered, he's got some nerve. The room thickened with tension. Judge Dryden lifted her eyes, meeting his with a stare sharp enough to carve through steel. Mr. Vale, take these proceedings seriously. This is not a college debate. Preston's grin stretched wider. I'm taking it seriously. My dad said this will be sorted out soon anyway. The words hung in the air like a spark near gasoline. Judge Dryden paused, pen hovering mid-sentence. Excuse me? Preston shrugged, eyes half-lidded with privilege. My dad knows people, he said. Will, make it right. You mean through proper legal channels, I assume? She said, voice still calm. Duh. Preston chuckled under his breath. Sure, if that's what you want to call it. A ripple ran through the room. Even the court reporter looked up. Judge Dryden leaned forward slightly. Mr. Vale, are you suggesting that justice can be purchased? He muttered it carelessly, like it didn't matter. My dad can buy you. Silence. The kind of silence that slaps. The bailiff straightened. A woman gasped. Even Preston seemed to realize to light that he'd crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. Judge Dryden didn't flinch. She didn't yell. She simply stared, letting the weight of his words sink deep. Then she turned a page. Proceed, she said. The prosecutor, Harper Linwood, young, composed but visibly rattled, cleared his throat. Your Honor, the state intends to submit video evidence from the night of the arrest. Preston groaned. Oh, come on, this is ridiculous. Judge Dryden raised a hand. You will remain silent while counsel speaks. Her tone was sharp enough to slice him open. Preston's lips snapped shut. The courtroom screen flickered on. Police body cam footage filled the wall. Preston's drunken voice blasted through the speakers. Do you know who my father is? You can't touch me? Footage showed him kicking the patrol car door, screaming at officers, calling them low-ped clowns. And suddenly, the courtroom understood. Preston Vale wasn't just entitled, he was spiraling. And Judge Dryden was about to stop the spiral cold. The atmosphere inside the courtroom shifted instantly as if the air itself recoiled from Preston's arrogance. Whatever tiny shred of sympathy anyone might have held for him evaporated into nothing. Judge Dryden watched the footage in complete silence, jotting deliberate notes with a face carved from stone. When the screen finally went dark, the weight that settled over the room was suffocating. Preston's smugness didn't disappear, but it faltered, his jaw clenched, his eyes twitching with the first hints of fear. Pride kept his chin high, but his confidence was undeniably cracking. Judge Dryden spoke slowly, her voice controlled but deadly. Mr. Veal, the evidence paints a very clear picture of your conduct, and your attitude today confirms it. She paused, letting the words hang heavy. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we proceed? Preston opened his mouth, then shut it again. For the first time, uncertainty sparkled in his eyes. He turned abruptly to his attorney, whispering frantic, uneven words, but it was far too late. The gallery exchanged glances. They weren't witnessing a routine hearing anymore. They were watching a privileged young man crash headfirst into reality. Judge Dryden adjusted her glasses, expression cool and immovable. She gave the prosecutor a respectful nod. Let's continue. We have much to discuss before sentencing, but in the next hour, Preston Vale would learn a brutal truth. Money can't buy respect, and arrogance can't buy freedom. The the world Preston came from. To understand why Preston believed he could say something so outrageous inside a courtroom, you have to understand the environment that raised him. He grew up in South Lake, Texas-on area, where lawns were manicured like fairways and driveways gleamed with luxury vehicles. His father, Gerald Vale, commanded one of the largest commercial development companies in the state. His mother, Cynthia Vale, was a socialite known for charity galas, pearl necklaces, and a reputation that was equal parts admired and feared. From his childhood onward, Preston wasn't praised for who he was, only for who he belonged to. At 16, he received a silver BMW that cost more than some families earned annually. At 17, he spent weekends at Lake Travis with other wealthy teens, where the only rule was that there were no rules. Every time trouble found him, his father's connections answered the door. Speeding tickets disappeared. School suspensions evaporated. Even a hit and run involving a parked car was swept away like dust. Preston just needs to mature, his mother confidently told the principal. He's not a bad boy, just spirited. Spirited became the family euphemism for reckless. In college at TCU, Preston's ego grew wings. He studied business administration, but the real education came from late nights at expensive bars, wild parties, and broken rules. To his friends, mostly other rich kids, Preston was the ringleader, paid the tab, bragged that his dad golfed with senators, and strutted like life owed him everything. One night, his roommate Dylan Keating tried to intervene. "Dude, one day this whole my dad can fix it thing isn't going to work," he warned. Preston tossed a baseball in the air, laughing. "You really think anyone's going to say no to Gerald Vale's son?" Dylan shook his head slowly. "You don't get it. People talk. Professors, cops, everyone. They're sick of you." Preston shrugged. "They can stay sick. I'll be fine." At a country club dinner that weekend, Preston sat beside millionaires trading jokes about greasing the right palms. What others would call corruption, he labeled strategy. His father put a hand on his shoulder as they left. "Someday all this will be yours. Just learn how to handle pressure and people. Never show weakness." That advice would come back to haunt him. The night everything unraveled, the night of his DUI was supposed to be just another victory lap, another night where consequences didn't exist. Finals had ended. He wanted to celebrate. The plan was simple. Drinks at the Magnolia Room, then drive across town. But as the night deepened, so did his recklessness. He grew louder, meaner, more unhinged. Around 1 a.m., he staggered out of the bar, keys jingling in his hand. "Sir, maybe I should call you a ride," the valet suggested gently. Preston flashed a sloppy grin. "You know who my dad is?" The valet didn't answer. Preston brushed him off and slid behind the wheel. 2 miles later, a clipped truck, a destroyed traffic sign, a nearly demolished light pole. A couple walking their dog called 911. Officers Brian Soto and Amanda Ruiz arrived to find Preston leaning against his car, laughing, slurring, spinning excuses. "Sir, stay where you are," Soto said. "You've been drinking?" Preston pointed at him, grinning like a child who thought he was clever. "You're about to make a big mistake. You'll regret this when you find out who I am." When the officer tried to take his license, Preston snatched it back. "You can't touch me. Dad can buy your whole department." Every frame was captured on body cam, every stumble, every insult, every arrogant laugh. The next morning, Gerald's lawyer posted bail quietly, but this time something had changed. Gerald didn't storm into the station. He looked exhausted, like a man facing the truth he'd spent years ignoring. When Preston came home expecting comfort, he got none. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Gerald asked. Preston shrugged. "Relax. It's just bad press. Fix it." Gerald stared at his son, long, heavy, disappointed. "Not this time, Preston. You're going to face this one on your own." For the first time in his life, Preston had no comeback. But pride fed for 20 years sat on his shoulders like armor. The final collision on the road, it was the first Friday of May, humid and restless. Neon lights glowed across downtown Fort Worth. Preston, half in tucked shirt and drunken swagger, strutted out of the Magnolia Room. He'd spent hours boasting, buying drinks, charming bartenders into one more glass of bourbon each time they cut him off. At the valet stand, the young worker hesitated again. "Mr. Veal, I've had less than you think," Preston snapped, grabbing his keys. Moments later, his black Audi growled to life. He sped into the warm night, music blasting, shouting lyrics into the empty air. He felt untouchable. Till he wasn't. He blew through an intersection. The pickup truck was already halfway through. Screech. Impact. Metal twisting. A mailbox exploding. The airbag slammed him backward. Steam hissed. For a moment, everything was frozen. Then Preston laughed. A fearful, sloppy, drunken laugh. A middle-aged man stepped out of the truck, injured and furious. "You crazy or something? You nearly killed me?" Preston waved him off. "Relax. I'll pay. I've got insurance. Just go home. You're drunk." "I'm calling the cops," the man snapped. Preston rolled his eyes. Your dad can't drive for you," the man cut him off. "Calling the police." Minutes later, Soto and Ruiz arrived, experienced officers, but unprepared for the level of arrogance that oozed from Preston. Step away from the vehicle, Soto ordered. Preston smirked. You know who I am, right? Right now, Soto replied. You're a guy standing next to a wrecked car. Everything was recording. The swagger, the defiance, the insults. Hands where I can see them, Soto said. Oh, come on, Preston groaned. I'll call my dad. Sis will disappear. Officer Ruiz pointed at the empty bourbon bottle rolling on the seat. Dinner with a bottle of whiskey? That's not mine, Preston snapped. Soto announced a field sobriety test. Preston refused. You'll still be working for me someday, he spat. Backup arrived. Soto reached for cuffs. Preston jerked away. Don't touch me, you don't know who my dad is, Ruiz finally snapped. We don't care who he is. You're under arrest for DUI and resisting. The moment the word arrest dropped, Preston fought. Soto pinned his arms. Ruiz cuffed him. The camera captured his final, desperate scream. You'll regret this? My dad can buy your badge. Officer Soto didn't flinch. He didn't argue, simply read Preston his rights with the calm efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times. As he guided Preston toward the squad car, the metallic door shut with a heavy thud and, for the first time that night, Preston didn't look powerful, rich, or untouchable. He looked small and stunned. At the station, the illusion shattered completely. No velvet ropes, no special treatment. No whispered phone calls or quiet favors. Just fingerprint ink, paperwork, and a cold bench. He sat like every other detainee, stripped of privilege, stripped of performance, stripped of the arrogance that had carried him through life. 2 hours later, his father's lawyer walked in, hair messy, still in pajamas, exhaustion written across his face. You're lucky nobody was killed, he muttered while signing his release. Preston smirked. Please, they can't touch me. Dad will fix it. But when he got home, nothing was fixed. There were no panicked phone calls, no heated conversations with police chiefs, no legal firestorm being orchestrated on his behalf. Gerald Vale sat alone in the living room, a single lamp illuminating the disappointment lining his face. Sit down, he said. Preston sighed dramatically and dropped onto the couch. I'm sure you already handled it. Gerald slowly looked up. Handled it, son. You humiliated yourself. You humiliated me. Come on, Dad, don't. You've spent your whole life believing money makes you better than people, Gerald said, voice stiff but trembling underneath. I can't keep covering for you. Preston's face stiffened. So what, you're gonna let them throw me in jail? If that's what it takes for you to grow up, Gerald replied, cold and unflinching. The words hit harder than the crash. Preston stared, stunned, as his father walked away. But even then he didn't believe the consequences were real. In his mind, this was just another storm his father would soon calm. Until the courtroom. The morning of the hearing, Preston walked into the Tarrant County Courthouse like it was a photo shoot, not a legal battle. He wore a $2,000 suit, a fresh haircut, designer sunglasses, and that same careless smirk he'd perfected over years of privilege. Cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions about him, the notorious son of real estate mogul Gerald Vale. Inside, the crowd was bigger than usual for a misdemeanor. Word had spread. The spoiled rich kid who yelled, "My dad can buy your badge," was finally facing a judge. People leaned forward to see him. Preston basked in it, offering a faint grin like they were his audience. But Judge Selena Drayden wasn't one of his admirers. She'd seen dozens, like him, polished, confident, and utterly convinced that consequences were optional. Her gaze swept the room as she took her seat. When her eyes briefly met Preston's, they didn't linger. They didn't need to. The bailiff called out, Case No. 2216B. The State of Texas versus Preston Vale. Preston's attorney, the normally unshakable Charles Denton, stood stiffly beside him. Even he looked uneasy. He'd warned Preston that Judge Drayden didn't play political games, and definitely didn't tolerate disrespect. Mr. Vale, the judge began, you are charged with driving under the influence, property damage, and resisting arrest. Do you understand these charges? Preston gave a lazy nod. Yes, ma'am. It's Your Honor, she corrected. He forced a smile. Right, sorry, Your Honor. Denton leaned in to whisper advice, but Preston waved him away. Judge Drayden raised an eyebrow. Counselor, ensure your client understands decorum. Yes, Your Honor, Denton replied sharply. The prosecution presented its case. Officer Brian Soto took the stand, posture straight, voice calm. He recounted every detail, the slurred words, reckless driving, belligerence, the threats. Then the footage played. Preston watched himself on the giant screen, the swagger, the insults, the drunken shouts. You'll regret this. My dad can buy your badge. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Even Denton's jaw tightened. Preston's face grew pale. Mr. Vale, the judge said, would you like to comment? Preston shrugged. I was drunk. People say stupid things when they're drunk. Do you often threaten police officers when intoxicated? She asked. No, ma'am, Your Honor. I didn't mean it. Her gaze didn't soften. Words carry weight, Mr. Vale, especially when spoken to those sworn to protect the public. He leaned back, crossing his arms. It's not like I hurt anyone. Her tone sharpened, slicing the air. Not physically. But your behavior was dangerous, disrespectful, and an insult to everything this courtroom represents. Preston glanced toward his father. Gerald looked older not in age, but in spirit. The prosecution rested. Denton rose, trying to salvage it. My client acknowledges poor judgment. He is young and expresses remorse. Remorse, the judge repeated. Mr. Veal, do you feel remorse? Yeah, I shouldn't have said what I said. That's not what I asked, she replied. I asked if you feel remorse, not for what you said, but for who you disrespected. Preston blinked. One is regret for being caught, she said softly. The other is regret for being wrong. The words hit him like a hammer. Preston whispered harshly, Stop talking. But Preston, still clinging to the last threads of ego, muttered, You just want to make an example out of me? No, Mr. Veal. Judge Drayden replied calmly. The law makes examples of those who refuse to learn. The courtroom froze. Do you have anything else to say for yourself? Preston looked around the audience, staring with judgment. The officers he insulted sitting watchfully in the back. His father sitting like a man grieving something still alive. Finally, he whispered, No, Your Honor. Very well, she said. I'll render my decision shortly. Preston exhaled in relief. Too soon. The sentencing moment when court reconvened, the air felt different, heavier, as if everyone could sense the shift coming. Preston sat stiffly, staring at the table. Smirk was gone. So was the swagger. All that remained was a hollow, nervous shell. Judge Drayden opened the file, flipping pages with deliberate calm. When she spoke, her voice carried authority that filled every corner of the courtroom. Mr. Veal, this court has heard evidence of reckless conduct, lack of accountability, and profound disrespect. We have heard your words both the night of your arrest and during this hearing. Preston swallowed hard. I reviewed the footage again during recess. Your behavior was not just irresponsible, it was dangerous. You risked lives. You insulted public servants. And you treated this courtroom as a stage for your privilege. Her words hit like blows, steady, measured, unavoidable. But the most troubling aspect, she continued, is your attitude. You seem to believe justice is something your father can purchase, that laws are for others, not you. I didn't mean it like that, Preston muttered. Then how did you mean it? He had no answer. None. Anger does not excuse arrogance, she said. And intoxication does not erase accountability. A hush fell over the room. You have spent your life shielded by wealth. This courtroom does not answer to money. It answers to principle. Denton tried to speak. Your Honor, may I? You may not, she said sharply. Her attention returned fully to Preston. Before I issue sentencing, understand this. Privilege may protect you from hardship, but it cannot protect you from yourself. Her final words echoed like a verdict in themselves. Every man eventually stands in the shadow of his own choices. And today, finally, Preston reached his. Gerald Veal lowered his eyes. His hands clenched so tightly his knuckles turned white. Judge Drayden's voice cut through the courtroom like a blade. Mr. Veal is hereby found guilty of driving under the influence and resisting arrest. His bail is revoked. He will serve 30 days in county jail for contempt of court and an additional 6 months for endangerment. He will complete 200 hours of community service, specifically working with victims of impaired driving. A gasp rolled across the room like a shockwave. Even Preston's attorney looked stunned, speechless. Preston jerked upright. Wait, jail you can't be serious. Judge Drayden's eyes narrowed with measured precision. Do you think I'm here for amusement? He froze before the bailiff's hand clamped onto his shoulder. Sit down, the bailiff warned. The judge never raised her voice. She didn't need to. You will leave this courtroom in custody today. Use the time to reflect on the value of respect, humility, and personal responsibility. For the first time, Preston's tone cracked, not arrogant, not smug, just scared. What? Please, Your Honor, my dad. This is not your father's sentence, Mr. Veal, she said. It's yours. Silence swallowed the room. Gerald slowly rose. His voice shook, not from fear, but from truth, finally escaping. Your Honor, thank you, the entire courtroom murmured. Preston spun toward him. Betrayed, Dad. You're thanking her? Owl's eyes shimmered. I should have done this years ago. 2 deputies stepped forward. The cold click of handcuffs echoed like a funeral bell. Preston didn't resist. He stared blankly ahead, processing nothing, understanding everything too late. Phones recorded. Pens scratched paper. A dozen worlds reacted, but Judge Drayden stayed still, composed. She gathered her files, then paused and looked back at him one last time. I hope, she said softly, that when you walk out of that cell in 30 days, you finally understand something. Respect cannot be bought. It is earned. And once you lose it, money cannot bring it back. The gavel hit, done. Preston was let out. His father watching not angrily, not proudly, But like a man finally letting go of a burden he helped create, the door closed behind them with a heavy finality. But the world outside wasn't done. The internet erupts. Within hours, Preston's downfall exploded online. Someone in the gallery had filmed the moment the judge sentenced him. The outburst, the panic, the cuffs. The clip hit social media before he even reached the holding cell. 1 hour, 1 million views. 3 hours, 8 million. By sunset, a national wildfire. Caption: Rich kid tells judge my dad can buy you. Leaves in handcuffs. Twitter threads roasted him with ruthless precision. This judge is my hero. Entitlement meets consequences. America needed this today. TikTok stitched the clip with dramatic music and slow zooms. YouTube commentary channels devoured it. News anchors praised the judge's courage. Talk shows replayed the sentencing line on loop. Privilege may protect you from hardship, but it cannot protect you from yourself. By morning, Preston Vale wasn't just a story, he was a symbol. The Vale household goes silent. While the world laughed, the Vale mansion grew quieter than it had ever been. Gerald sat at the breakfast table, staring at the front page, his son in cuffs, his legacy exposed. Silence finally broken. Cynthia walked in, flawless makeup, hiding trembling hands. They're talking about it on every channel. Every single one. Gerald exhaled, tired. Let them talk. You think this will ruin us? She whispered. He finally met her eyes. Maybe it's time something did. The judge becomes a hero she never asked to be judge. Selena Drayden returned to her office, her phone buzzing nonstop. Reporters begging for interviews, colleagues sending praise, strangers calling her the backbone of justice. Her clerk peeked in. Judge, CBS wants a statement. In the Dallas Morning News? And no comment, she said calmly. Lauren smiled. You know, people think you're a hero, right? Heroes don't wear robes, she replied gently. They do their duty. But as she left the courthouse that evening, a crowd outside clapped. She didn't wave, but she allowed herself a small, quiet smile. Preston's jail, reality Tarrant County Jail, was a universe Preston had never imagined. Cold walls, thin mattress, cheap shoes. No father, no excuses, no wealth to hide behind. Hey, rich boy, an inmate called out from across the hall. Your dad buying dinner for all of us tonight? Laughter followed him everywhere. By day 2, his confidence cracked. By day 5, it collapsed. His arrogance had nowhere to live in a place full of people who'd known real struggle. A shift begins one night while mopping a hallway. Preston overheard 2 inmates talking. Jerome squinted at him. You the kid who mouthed off to that judge? Preston winced. Yeah, that's me. Jerome laughed. Man, you got guts, or stupidity. Hard to tell. Calvin shrugged. Doesn't matter. He's here like the rest of us. It was the first time anyone had spoken to Preston as an equal, not beneath him, not above him, just human. Release, and a new kind of fear. When his 30 days ended, there were no cameras waiting, no reporters, no father, just sunlight and a bus ticket. He'd never felt so small or so awake. At home, Gerald looked at him long and hard. You look older, he said. I feel older, Preston replied quietly. Gerald sighed. I thought protecting you was love. Turns out I was teaching you how to fail. Preston nodded. I don't deserve how easy I've had it. That, Gerald said, is where change begins. Community service, the real sentence, working in a rehab center for drunk driving victims, transformed him. He scrubbed floors, delivered meals, listened to stories of shattered families. One woman, Erica, approached him after sharing her trauma. You're the Veal boy, right? He braced himself. Yeah, the one everyone hates online? She smiled gently. Then use it. Turn it into something better. Her kindness hit harder than any insult ever had. The letter weeks later, Judge Drayden received a handwritten letter. You were right. Respect isn't bought, it's built. Thank you for giving me the chance to earn it, Preston Vale. She folded it quietly, placing it in her drawer. No press. No applause. Just a small moment of proof that justice, when done right, plants seeds, not scars. The message for the audience at the end of it all, one truth remains. Respect doesn't come from power. It comes from humility. The strongest person is never the one who commands a room, but the one who learns to face themselves. If this story moved you, subscribe Fate Tales for more stories that show how fragile and how powerful redemption can be.